Tonight, the White House prepares a national response to the coronavirus outbreak.
What he's doing is late, too late.
As the global outbreak becomes a political issue.
And no love lost.
Bernie, in fact, hasn't passed much of anything. Obama.
Excuse me.
Ganging up on the frontrunner in last night's Democratic dogpile.
It adds up to 4 more years of Donald Trump.
Why some Democrats want to kick out Sanders to make room for more in the big tent.
Plus,
So every day I write a cross on my hand.
examining the power of faith.
Listen, and she made me wipe it off.
And a boy defends the sign of the cross.
All this and more tonight on Fake Nation.
Combating the coronavirus. So welcome to Faith Nation. I'm Jenna Browder.
And I'm John Jessup. Tonight, the Trump administration is moving to calm fears about the deadly coronavirus as it reaches more places and triggers increasing concern of a global pandemic.
Now, the spread of the virus also taking its toll on the economy and world markets. CBN White House correspondent Ben Kennedy joins us from the North Lawn with the latest. Ben?
Well, Jenna, John, the CDC says it's not a question of if the virus will spread, but a matter of when. President Trump insists the U.S. is well prepared for any outbreak and is even now considering appointing a coronavirus czar to coordinate any response. With a vaccine still months away, lawmakers are looking at other options to stop the spread of the virus. The government says they need around 300 million masks and respirators, but the 3M factory in South Dakota making them can't keep up with the demand.
But it will have to have the professionals in place, the resources that are adequate, and not be using scare tactics about people coming back to our country.
The virus has spread to at least 8 nations in Europe, and Brazil now has its first confirmed case. Health officials believe containing the virus within borders will be difficult, following a spike in Italy, Iran, and South Korea. Acting Department of Homeland Security Secretary Chad Wolf said the threat to the U.S. from coronavirus remains low. This as the White House seeks billions in emergency funding to combat the virus.
What he's doing is late, too late, anemic. Hopefully we can make up for the loss of time.
It has been relatively contained in the United States, very few cases. But, you know, people worry about the worst case scenario. What if we start seeing thousands of cases in the United States? What impact would this have?
Economist Stephen Moore says China's economy has been crushed over the virus, and he's hearing reports its performance could have receded by 10% in just the first quarter of this year. The stock market followed Monday's drop with another plunge of 900 points Tuesday, resulting in a loss of $1.7 trillion in value over the last 2 days.
There's a lot of spooked investors out there. We've seen about a 7 to 8% decline in stocks since the coronavirus first emerged. My own feeling is that once this does get contained, stocks are going to bounce back, but we just don't know how long this will last.
Now, Senator Chuck Schumer is calling for an additional $6 billion to combat the outbreak, but the White House here behind me is sticking firm with its $2.5 billion request to pay for vaccines, treatment, and even protective equipment. John, Jenna?
All right, Ben Kennedy at the White House, thank you. To Campaign 2020, Democratic White House hopefuls sprinting toward the finish line in South Carolina, fresh off last night's messy debate.
While the 7 Democrats trained their fire on President Trump ahead of this weekend's primary, they appeared to save their biggest punches for each other.
I've known for a long time who I'm going to vote for.
Just hours after the fiery debate, former Vice President Joe Biden picking up a key endorsement this morning.
I want the public to know that I'm voting for Joe Biden.
The highest-ranking African-American in Congress throwing his support behind Biden, who's ahead in the latest state polls, but with a shrinking lead. The Vermont senator on defense, trying to cement his frontrunner status.
How will you convince voters that a Democratic socialist can do better than President Trump?
Well, you're right. The economy is doing really great for people like Mr. Bloomberg and other billionaires.
Vladimir Putin thinks that Donald Trump should be president of the United States, and that's why Russia is helping you get elected so you'll lose to him.
Sanders playing cleanup for his seeming praise for socialist dictators and not being able to answer how he'd pay for his expensive programs.
Bernie Sanders' analysis is right. The difference is I don't like his solutions.
Elizabeth Warren called herself the real progressive with a comprehensive plan, but saved her biggest swipe for former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg, drawing a comparison to an allegation in which he urged a female employee to have an abortion to her own pregnancy.
I was 21 years old. I didn't have a union to protect me, and I didn't have any federal law on my side. At least I didn't have a boss who said to me, kill it.
It is a claim Bloomberg forcefully denies, though there were a few lighter moments like this one.
We can, in fact, prevent North Korea from launching missiles to take them down. And if we don't, why am I stopping? No one else stops.
Tuesday's debate has been panned as unpresidential and a waste because of the infighting.
Tom, I think she was talking about my plan, not yours.
I think we were talking about math, and it doesn't take 2 hours.
Forcing at least one candidate to issue this warning.
If we spend the next 4 months tearing our party apart, we're going to watch Donald Trump spend the next 4 years tearing our country apart.
And at stake in Saturday's primary are South Carolina's 63 delegates. Right now, Senator Sanders is winning the delegate count with 45 delegates, followed by Buttigieg and Biden with 26 and 15 respectively. The next big contest 6 days from now, Super Tuesday.
And here now for our Faith Nation political panel, Tom Bevan, co-founder and executive editor at Real Clear Politics, and CBN's chief political analyst, David Brody. Both of you, good to have you. Thanks for being here. Tom, to you first. Was there a real winner last night? What do you think?
No winners. No winners among the contestants, no winners among the moderators, no winners, I think, among the Democratic Party. I mean, maybe you could say Donald Trump won. There were survivors. I think Biden, survived. Bernie fielded a lot of incoming fire and I think managed to get out of there without being wounded in a serious way. So no winners, a lot of losers and a few survivors.
Well, to the losers, David, a lot of analysis today is saying that the biggest losers were the moderators, but about the folks on the stage, who seemed to lose the most, who had the most to lose and who actually lost?
Well, Bernie had the most to lose, and I agree with Tom. I mean, I think he survived, in air quotes. I mean, we knew it was going to be a Bernie barrage like we talked about, and it was. But, Bernie's Bernie. I mean, here he's a socialist, and he's proud of it, and he doesn't care if they're going to come after him because he believes in what he believes. And so when you're authentic, it worked for Trump. When you're authentic, it takes away some of the ways you can damage a candidate like that. It's just hard because he's not on talking points. He's on his authentic socialist DNA. And I think there's a big difference, and that's why it's harder to hurt Bernie than maybe some other typical politicians.
A lot of people are drawing comparisons between Donald Trump in 2016 and Bernie Sanders in 2020. Tom, do you see, is that a fair comparison to make? Could Bernie Sanders come out and actually win this like Donald Trump did in 2016?
I do think it's a fair comparison. I mean, Bernie's an outsider. He's fighting against the establishment of his own party in the same way that Trump was. In some ways, Bernie's been fighting against the media, folks on MSNBC and other networks like that. For whatever reason, he is inspiring to Democratic voters in a way that the other candidates have not been. I mean, you see these rallies that he's pulling 10,000, 12,000 people in Colorado and Texas in the same way that Trump did. And so I do think there are a lot of similarities. And quite frankly, he's running on a populist message. It's a left-wing populist message as opposed to what Trump ran on. But there's that strain of populism that he's tapping into that none of the other candidates are.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Let's fight over it. We're going to pretend that it's last night's debate. David, did the other candidates perhaps miss their shot to take at Bernie Sanders ahead of the momentum? This is the last big game before Super Tuesday.
Yeah, I don't think they missed their shot. I think they were taking their shots where appropriate. I think they'll miss their shot if they don't figure out between February 29th and March 3rd. You got 3 days to who's getting out of this race. And we know Bloomberg's not getting out of the race because it's Super Tuesday or bust for him. Right. Biden looks to do well in South Carolina. He's not getting out of the race. So that kind of leaves Klobuchar, who I think will get out. And then, of course, Warren. And I don't think she's getting out because I think she's going to be a kingmaker down the road when she has a few hundred delegates and says, who wants my delegates? So I think everybody has an opportunity to stay in, even Buttigieg, of course. And so, No, I have a feeling it's going to be muddy going into Super Tuesday, and that's good news for Bernie Sanders.
Following Super Tuesday, you know, do you think Bernie Sanders will be nailed down and forced to explain how he will pay for all of these things that he's promising? I mean, last night we saw a bit of that, but really his feet have not been held to the fire all that much.
No, and I don't expect that he will any more seriously than he was last night. I mean, that was a real opportunity. They tried to get some numbers out of him. He sort of deflected. It will happen in a general election if he's the Democratic candidate. I'm sure Trump's not going to let him get by with any of that in terms of, you know, detailing how you're going to pay for the, what, $60 trillion that he's offering. So, but I think Bernie is well positioned for Super Tuesday. Tom Steyer's a guy who, you know, he could get out and potentially help, you know, consolidate some of the moderate vote, perhaps. But, you know, I think Klobuchar might even stay in. She wants to win Minnesota, North Dakota. She just placed $4 million of advertising on Super Tuesday. So you've got one candidate who's playing to win, and all the rest are in for their own sort of, they're playing not to lose, they're playing to be kingmaker, they're playing for their own sort of individual purposes, and that's really hurting the overall party.
And let's also remember that just because, you're right, Tom, maybe none of them get out, and they're all in on Super Tuesday, and the big grand scheme plan is to make sure Bernie doesn't have the majority of delegates. And
doesn't reach the 1991.
Doesn't reach the 1991. He can't win on the first ballot, and someone emerges as the candidate. I don't know, Hillary, Michelle Obama. I don't know. I'm just saying that, you know, that's a possibility. That could be the grand scheme.
All right, David and Tom, thank you so much. Coming up, the takedown of Bernie Sanders, why one group is pushing a Dem-on-Dem fight to get rid of the party's frontrunner.
Having sex before you marry is a bad idea.
Don't tell me there's no such thing as gun violence.
That just depends on your definition of when life begins.
Watch Dan and Dale tackle trending topics that test your faith on the next Faith Wire, Monday night at 9:30. The Global Lane takes you around the world, providing facts over fiction.
What might rising trade and geopolitical tensions mean for you on the home front?
With over 45 years of experience, award-winning journalist Gary Lane brings you the truth from a global angle.
What about the issue of immigration?
World news analysis you won't see anywhere else.
And it's all right here on the Global Lane.
Watch The Global Lane, Thursday night at 9:30.
Welcome back. Joining us now is Jonathan Cott, Executive Director of the Big Tent Project, aimed at boosting moderates and bashing Bernie Sanders. Jonathan, good to have you. Thanks for stopping by.
Thanks for having me.
So why are you training your fire on Bernie Sanders?
I think we're just trying to make sure that voters have all the information about Bernie Sanders, about his policy positions, about his record over 30, 40 years before they go and vote. We think it's very important that they know what his policies would mean to them, what it would mean to their health care, what it mean to their taxes. And I think it's surprising that he's gone this far and become the front runner and not received the same scrutiny that others have. So we're just trying to make sure that he receives the same sort of scrutiny that others have on their policy positions.
So what specifically about his record and policy are you trying to highlight?
I think his plans for Medicare for all, his plans for taxes, his plans for free government programs that he doesn't seem to have a plan to pay for or plan to get passed. I think it's unfortunate that Elizabeth Warren put out a detailed health care plan, how she would pay for it and how she would get it passed in Congress, and it got scrutinized. She was questioned on it on a daily basis, and Bernie Sanders just says Medicare for all and union workers don't worry about your health care, and he seems to get a pass on it. We want to make sure that that doesn't happen.
Jonathan, some would say that you're eating your own, stoking a Democrat on Democrat fight, and that this is bad for the party. Are you essentially trying to kick Bernie out of the Big Tent?
Oh, I'm not trying to kick Bernie out of the Big Tent. Bernie himself is not part of the Democratic Party. He is identified as an independent. That's who he is. I would say we all welcome Bernie in the party if he wants to help win the presidency and win down ballot races. But you're seeing a lot of congressional candidates already saying they're very nervous about Bernie Sanders on the top of the ticket. So the Democratic Party is very wide. There's a very big tent. It goes from Elizabeth Warren to Joe Biden and everybody in between. But you have to be willing to answer some of the tough questions and how you would get your plans passed. All these other candidates have, and all these other candidates have helped down ballot people get elected. Bernie Sanders has yet to do that.
You mentioned Bernie Sanders not getting some of the scrutiny that other candidates have gotten. Do you fear that some voters out there, they might just sort of take him for his word without really getting that scrutiny? They might just sort of say, you know, free education, all of these other programs sound good.
I think they will. It sounds good to them, and they don't really press him on how he'll pay for it or what it will mean for other aspects of their life. Free tuition sounds great. Okay, who's going to pay for it? What are the teachers going to make? What's the level of education going to be? How good are your kids going to get taught at school?
Jonathan, do you have a specific candidate in mind who you think should get this nomination? Somebody who the Big Tent Project is plugging?
No, not at all. This is not affiliated with any candidate. We think all the candidates have a responsibility to tell voters what they would do if elected president.
Any particular moderate you think has a good shot on in South Carolina this Saturday?
I think Joe Biden is showing he's got a great shot on Saturday.
Jonathan Cott, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
And when we come back, faith among Democrats and a new report on Christianity and public life in America. You're watching Faith Nation on the CBN News Channel.
On the home front.
Thanks for joining us for CBN's On the Home Front, where we highlight what the men and women of America's military do to defend our country. CBN honors the men and women in our military with an initiative called Helping the Home Front. It partners with churches across the country to meet the needs of their military families, from repairing homes to wiping out medical bills for wounded veterans.
On the Home Front, Tuesday morning at 10:30.
If you want to be an attorney with a passion for serving people and for excellence, Regent University needs to be high on your list.
Regent's award-winning law school doesn't just create lawyers. We create leaders, judges, prosecutors and defense lawyers, civil litigators, and leaders in government.
My focus has been trying to really make sure we have the future leaders we need for the bench and the bar and for society generally.
You'll learn from highly credentialed leaders who are current and former judges, distinguished scholars, and ACLJ counsel.
I'm so glad I chose Regent. The relationships here have been amazing. The faculty have been amazing. Not everybody's called to the same thing when they leave law school, but they're called by a God who has a purpose for their lives, and He is going to use that education to make a difference in the world.
Regent will prepare you to be a purpose-driven, practice-ready lawyer. To start your rewarding law career, complete the online application, submit your transcripts, and take the law school admissions test by July. Apply today.
Well, tonight, Democrats prepare to make a big decision in the Palmetto State Saturday.
Now, the stage is set for a tough fight between mainstream Democrats and progressives like Bernie Sanders, who calls himself a Democratic socialist. Last night in South Carolina, Pete Buttigieg spelled out what's at stake for Democratic voters.
Senator Sanders at one point said it was going to be 40 trillion, then it was 30, then it was 17. It's an incredible shrinking price tag. At some point has said it is unknowable to even see what the price tag would be. Now there are new numbers going. I'll tell you exactly what it adds up to. It adds up to 4 more years of Donald Trump, Kevin McCarthy as Speaker of the House, and the inability to get the Senate into Democratic hands.
Faith looks to be a major issue this election, and last night several candidates brought it up on the debate stage.
In the night's final question, they shared their personal mottos.
Every day I write a cross on my hand to remind myself to tell the truth and do what's right no matter what.
It's Matthew 25. And that is, inasmuch as ye hath done it unto one of these, the least of thy brethren, ye hath done it unto me. For me, this is about how we treat other people and how we lift them up.
I seek to live by the teachings that say that if you would be a leader, you must first be a servant. And of course, the teaching, not unique to the Christian tradition, but a big part of it, that holds that we are to treat others as we would be treated.
And here now for more is Michael Ware, founder of Public Square Strategies and who led the faith outreach for President Obama in 2012. Michael, thank you so much for being with us.
Great to be with you.
Were you at all surprised to hear the candidates speak about their faith at last night's debate?
No, actually, all 3 of the remarks, so Buttigieg, Warren, and Steyer, all we've heard that from them on the campaign trail before up to this point. There's actually been a lot more references to faith in this primary than there was in 2016. I think it's a lot of personal references. It's not so much about faith in public life. It's more this is how faith motivates them and maybe citing scripture to support their policies. But this was actually pretty standard for this cycle.
Do you get the sense that it's pretty authentic or that it's just more convenient for them to win over voters?
You know, so I think for the stories that were told last night, Warren was a Sunday school teacher. She taught that scripture. Steyer, it's something he really does every day. I think the question for Christian voters is it those kinds of things that should earn my vote? So it's great to know more about the candidates. We want to know who we're voting for and what drives them. But voters shouldn't be so impressed by just the ability to cite Matthew 25 or just that the candidates know a scripture or two on either side of the aisle. You know, they got to be paying attention to policy too, what these candidates are proposing to do for their neighbors and their communities. Yeah.
Let me ask you this. President Obama, who you led faith outreach for back in 2012, excuse me, he did very well with white evangelicals in 2008, right. Getting 24% of that base. Hillary Clinton, on the other hand, she only got 16% of white evangelicals. Michael, are there any candidates this time around among the Democrats who you think can up that level back to Obama levels like we saw in 2008?
Yeah, it's a direct question, so I'll give you a direct answer. Vice President Biden has a real record of respect for religious institutions. He has an understanding of the role that faith plays in the lives of millions of Americans. And then I'd say Senator Amy Klobuchar is someone who has won evangelical votes in Minnesota, and she's also someone, I worked with her in the White House on adoption issues and anti-human trafficking issues that are really important to evangelical voters. So I think those are the 2 that have the greatest potential of reaching evangelical voters.
Are there any candidates who concern you with their policies and where they stand in terms of religious freedom and just a respect for faith?
Yeah, I think I had high hopes for Senator Elizabeth Warren at the beginning of this race. I think over the last few months, it's not just her policy positions, but she seems to be willing to show a level of antagonism towards social conservatives that I don't think is going to set someone up for success in a general election and then in the White House to bring the country together. So I'm particularly concerned about her.
What about Bernie Sanders?
Yeah, well, I think, remember in 2016, Senator Sanders went to Liberty.
That's right.
And was true to who he was, but treated folks there with respect, gave the best message he could. I think that there are certainly aspects of his record that evangelicals are going to have a problem with and going to want to press him on. But I also think that he has some potential delivering an economic message, especially in the Rust Belt, that could be attractive, especially if he shows a level of respect and inclusiveness to folks who disagree with him, maybe on some social issues.
While you're here, real quickly, we want you to plug your podcast.
Yeah, sure. So I host the Faith 2020 podcast that is helping voters view 2020 clearly through the lens of faith. And then the Church Politics podcast is a podcast I co-host with Justin Gibney, who's the president of the AND campaign. That's right.
Keeping yourself pretty busy.
Yeah, keeping myself busy. It's only going to get busier over the next few weeks. Yeah.
Michael, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Coming up, what's with all the dirty foreheads? This morning, we'll take a look at how millions are recognizing the beginning of Lent. That's next.
If you want to be an attorney with a passion for serving people and for excellence, Regent University needs to be high on your list.
Regent's award-winning law school doesn't just create lawyers. We create leaders, judges, prosecutors and defense lawyers, civil litigators, and leaders in government. Ready to become a purpose-driven, practice-ready lawyer? To start your rewarding career, complete the online application, submit your transcripts, and take the law school admissions test by July.
Nutrition, exercise, essential oils, weight loss, and more. It's Healthy Living with Lori Johnson.
Talk about what's in this.
Join CBN health reporter Lori Johnson to get the latest information from today's top health experts.
This is fantastic.
Find out what you need to know to live a healthier life. Watch Healthy Living, Tuesday night at 9:30.
Woohoo! Hi, Superbook fans. Here's something else you'll love. It's the new Superbook Bible app. It's packed with games, activities, and Superbook episodes that you can watch for free. Oh no! There's trivia, a fun daily devotional, and answers to your Bible questions. Plus, an easy-to-understand Bible the whole family will enjoy. You can even create your own Superbook character. Ta-da! Whoa!
Millsburg Falls man, come.
Sorry, pardon me. Sorry, excuse me. Ouch!
Are you getting this?
Earn super points to win daily prizes too, and so much more. Time to get back to my adventures. See you soon. It's the new Superbook Bible app. Free downloads on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon.
And finally today marks the start of the Lenten season as millions of Christians observe Ash Wednesday with prayer, fasting, and a cross drawn in ash across their foreheads.
Yeah, a lot of people with crosses on their foreheads today. In the Oval Office last month, 10-year-old William McLeod, you might remember, recalled being asked to remove ash from his forehead in front of his class while observing the Holy Day this time last year.
Then the teacher came up and like, it's unacceptable, wipe it off. And I told her 4 times and she didn't listen and she made me wipe it off.
And he had the president's ear. And there's our producer, Gabe LaMonica, with his baby and Ash Wednesday a few years ago. Well, Ash Wednesday is a sacred Christian tradition and concludes with the celebration of Easter. In a message this morning, the president and first lady said this tradition reminds us of our shared morality, and wished everyone observing this holy day a prayerful Lenten journey.
I'm going to try to squeeze in a mass a little bit
Are
later
you?
this evening.
Yeah, it's a nice tradition.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Well, thanks for watching Faith Nation.
Have a great evening.